call this meeting to order. All members are present. If you could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Comments and requests from visitors? No comments or requests. Okay, moving on to item 5, the consent agenda. There's nothing that needs to be pulled. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Kara, second by Lynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Action items, letter A, strategic plan for 2020-2025.
So, Board, we've been working through the ROCORI Vision 2025. For that, asking for action on this. Actually, I would like to have one more discussion and then move this to action in December. I did get some feedback over the weekend that I want to talk about, and if we feel like we want to move it with the changes, we can, but otherwise we can bring it back in December. Again, the goal was to have this plan in place for the 2025, so I want to make sure we get it right versus pushing it through. So under the blocks, the first word, the word is welcoming, and the feedback that I received was that was not a strong enough word, and that if all means all, then why don't we use the word inclusive? That was the first feedback I got on it. The second word we have dedicated, and in my notes to you, I used the word balanced, and so that was another word that was discussed. If rather than the word dedicated, if we want balance, because we want strong academics, but we want the overall student to be their wellness, so why not have that be an action word of being balanced rather than dedicated? So we would be focusing on strong academics and balancing that with the overall wellness of our students as far as homework load, mental health, emotional health. And the word growing, in that word, in that block, we have the word curiosity. And so the idea was to potentially look at using the word curiosity instead of growing. I'm sorry, I missed the block. Embracing. What we really are talking about during that is actual equity. So could we use a stronger word of equity in there? And then the last word was prepared. Is that word what we want to use, or do we want to use more of a word like progressive? So those were some of the ideas that I received over the weekend. So just wrap that up again. Inclusive instead of welcoming, balanced instead of dedicated, equitable instead of embracing, curiosity instead of growing, and progressive versus prepared. I do believe in the presentation or the slide that I set forth in there is that we addressed all of the things that we've talked about as a community in those areas. Do we just want to use different words in the blocks?
When was the last time your admin team reviewed this?
Just today.
Oh, okay.
We've been reviewing it on pretty regularly.
Okay. I'm just curious if it makes sense to send, because I think that those are good thoughts. But it might, I don't know if it makes sense for you to bring it to your admin team and have, kind of come back with a final proposal, or, I mean, I don't know if it's the best use of our time to try to kind of slice through each of those on the spot.
Okay.
But I like the suggestions. I think they were good ones.
I agree. I think there's strong. Express more what we really were looking for. Especially, I like the idea of the inclusive one because sometimes we can be welcoming, but we don't make sure that we're actually, treating people fairly across all dimensions of their education.
Any other thoughts? I certainly will bring this back to our admin team.
I like them too. I think that in some way, whether it was intentional or not, all of these words sort of describe a characteristic of a person, and so they kind of all tie together. And then in the end, this would be some or all characteristics that we hope students will walk away from ROCORI with these types of characteristics.
So I'll get with my admin team. We will use the same format as what you see now in the box with what we have. We'll change the words out. There was some discussion over some of the colorings. We'll look at maybe the black is a little too much. We'll look that over, and I will send this back out to you for December. I'd rather have it right, take it a little bit slower than just push something through. So I appreciate the extra work there.
There's a comment.
Just a minor comment, like the word.
Excuse me.
Yep.
We had an opportunity to do the comments from visitors previously, so that's why we're certainly recommending. Item B, Minnesota State High School League COVID installment.
So before you tonight, I have presented the first half of the payment to the Minnesota State High School League of $4,500. And I did recommend to you that we make the first half of the payment and watch to see what happens over the winter season and see if we see the movement necessary that we're looking for as a board and as a district. But being that we do not have a board meeting prior to when this is due, it's on the agenda for tonight for approval. I did include the links to the information that the high school league has put out and their movement towards making it a little more equitable for the school districts. But I am recommending that we pay the first half and watch what happens as the season progresses.
To clarify, we went from about $3,600 last year to potentially $14,000 this year. Just want the public to understand that that's what the high school league is doing. Part of it was pre-COVID, huge chunk of it is after COVID. Also reminding everybody that we do not have these state tournaments, which is what their function is. We did not get refunded for the sports that we missed last year. So, yeah, I think there should be extreme heartburn with this.
Shannon, I didn't quite hear you. What did we spend last year?
It was like 3,600 maybe. And then, so it's $3,600. Last, they were supposed to have their rep assembly meeting in May to approve their increases to $160 a fee and their $1 a fee, $1 per kid per number of kids and activities. that meeting didn't happen, they still approved that, and then that was what kind of slipped in there where we didn't know about that. Well, that again was before the whole COVID mess came, but I think the concern at that time was that they never attempted to refund any schools for all of the fees that we paid from the spring without any sports happening. I know we refunded our kids, and I'm assuming 90% of the schools, if not more, refunded their kids for those activities in the spring. So, not very good faith in my estimation for a nonprofit that's supposed to be, organizing all of the schools as members, and then come out with this COVID fee, hoping that, again, no one's going to challenge it. And I know for a fact, school boards all around the country, all around the state, have serious issues with this, especially the schools that are small, because they're getting taxed, if you want to call it that, or feed at a much higher level than in Eden Prairie. I mean, Eden Prairie pays $12,000, we paid $9,000. I mean, it's not computing when it comes to per pupil. So again, it does not feel very good when it comes to, again, a nonprofit group that says that they are made up of the members, run by the members. It feels like a group that, is dictating to us what we do, and we're not getting anything from them at this point from last March, theoretically through this whole year. We're just holding them. So, anyway, that's the background on that.
Can we use CARES, doesn't make it right or wrong, it's just a clarifying question. Can we use CARES Act funding for this?
Yes.
Do you know if the State High School League received, they are a nonprofit, did they receive any CARES Act funding as well?
They received some funding for the behavioral protection plan. They did
Okay.
not receive CARES Act stuff.
Okay.
Well, and something was just in the paper that they were going to be forgiven the loan, at least it's interest-free, but it might even be where it's going to go away. Yeah, I don't know, but it was in the STAR
Just
Tribune.
in the Star Tribune.
So yes, are they getting assistance? Yes, to some level.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, are you ready for a vote on this? Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we pay the first installment.
Motion by Lynn to pay the first installment.
I'll second that.
Second by Jennifer. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. A roll call vote, please. Jennifer?
Aye.
Nay.
Jason? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
So, motion passes 4-2 for the payment of the first installment. As presented. Item C, resolution to accept a donation. Let's see. Can we get a motion to?
I move to adopt a resolution to accept donations from Donors Choose Teaching Grant in the amount, for the value of $186. Second.
Motion by Kara, second by Sunny. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion items. Item 7A, canvassing the election. So, as you may have seen, we are going to be having a special meeting on the 13th of November at 7:30 here to canvass the election because of the 7 days of extension allowing ballots to be received postmarked by that election day
as soon as the results would be available will be on the 12th of November, that day. We weren't sure what time of that day it was going to be available, so that's why we set up a time on the 13th at some early morning to canvass the results. So they didn't, unfortunately, adjust the canvassing time frame, but they changed the law on that other piece. So any questions or concerns about that? Okay, item 7B, second readings on policies 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, and 6.6. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, so next time that'll come as action for approval at our next meeting. Item 7C, policy coming for the first readings, policy 7.8, 6.1, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, and 6.10. Any questions or concerns about those policies as presented? And then that will come back next time for a second reading prior, and then we'll one more time before approval. Moving on to item 7D, technology update. The first item on the agenda is to look at the user guide for our one-to-one devices. And so I believe that's in the packet. And so you've seen the copy of the user guides. This has gone through the technology committee, it's gone through the policy committee a couple of times. And so we are ready to present a one-to-one device document to you. And the reason it's coming to the board level at this is because it does include a fee as part of the user guide. So once we're ready to hand out our devices, we would also be asking for a non-refundable deposit on each one of the MacBook Airs. And being that it would be about half a year, the fee per device would be $25 with a cap of $75 for a family for this year, and that would be $50 a year per device after that with a cap of $150. If a family does qualify for free reduced lunch, that would go to from this year would go from 25 to 15. Next year would go from 50 to 25. One of the ads that we came up with in the last meeting of our policy was adding the reported at ROCORI.K12.mn.us. So any student who was to get something that's harassing, they would have a place to report it to. Our principals will work through on making sure that they have access to that email so that students can report inappropriate emails or harassing emails on their devices. And then you can also see in there the steps that would happen should their device be damaged, both accidentally and negligently. Any questions about the amount or the guide? And are you wanting the guide and the amount approved, or just the amount? I think probably the thing that's most important is that we approve the non-refundable deposit. When's our board meeting in December?
14.
The what, 13?
14.
14? If the board feels comfortable, I know that we don't want to we like to do 2 readings, but the board feels comfortable. This has gone through a pretty lengthy process, and I'm very comfortable with the document. But I also would understand if we wanted to wait until December to approve it as well.
My only concern would be just getting community feedback
about advocacy or just hearing from that, since this is the first week or maybe hear about it. I think it'd be good for that to at least have that opportunity before we approve it.
Is the fee, is that a pretty common fee amount that other districts are using?
I took the language from Sartell. Sartell's charging 60. So ours is just a little less than Sartell. And for the similar rights, they have aggregators.
And for the 2020-2021 school year, are we confident that we're going to be distributing these in the first part of the year?
I think so. I think Brian's going to give you an update here in the next meeting. I think so.
Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think we'll bring this back for action at the next.
The only thing I was wondering, you've got something on it that's damaged or stolen, or that there are things that happen beyond it. Since I had a computer that was damaged during a hurricane, wonder if there's something that could be like,
I think we're
out of people's control.
I think we're always willing to hear on a case-by-case basis, but also know that if your computer was damaged in a hurricane, you're most likely going to have some homeowner's insurance to it. You'll be able to say, hey, this happened. And I understand deductibles and all of those things, but I mean, there's going to be multiple ways for somebody in those types of active God-like situations.
Okay, I didn't know if there was something, certain cases that would be different than what's listed.
I just want to make a couple comments regarding the extent to which this was scrutinized and reviewed and revised many times. I served on the technology committee, also served on the one-to-one subcommittee, and also served on the policy committee, so saw this document in different angles with other people's perspectives over the course of the last 6 months, probably longer than that even. So just really letting the board know, the public know, that this has been reviewed by numerous groups of people with different interests within the school and some folks outside of the school. And I think that the folks have done a really nice job putting it together.
Moving on to item 7E, mid-year superintendent development.
We still have one more to the technology update. I'm not done yet.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm gonna go together.
So I've asked Mr. McCoskey to be here tonight to give us kind of an update of where we are at with our one-on-one.
Just here to give a quick verbal update on where we're at. And last time was a written one because there wasn't a lot to talk about. This time I have some better news. I can say right, well, not exactly at this moment, but my staff are working on getting the laptops unboxed, inventory set up, and so that is something we've started with in the last several days. They finally all arrived earlier than we were expecting, actually, which is good. So that process has begun. We are still waiting for the protective cases that they need to come in. We've had a lot of internal discussion on pros and cons of that, and we decided to wait on about $1.2 million in assets. It's probably worth waiting the extra couple weeks for those to come in. We're projecting those to reach us the second or third week of December. So our goal right now is to have the laptops ready to put in, put in those bags and start handing out in December. That's our target right now. We're, again, obviously still somewhat at the mercy of the supply chain. But with that, our goal is to start putting them in bags that are protective cases by then and handing them out. So obviously, the work we've done here with the one-to-one policy and getting that solidified, so we have the non-refundable deposit structure in place, so we can communicate that to parents and families is important because this is the kind of information we need to get out ahead of time, and if we're going to be able to stay on that kind of mid-December time frame right now, this is the kind of stuff that we probably need to start getting out to parents. So that's where we're at right now. In terms of Wi-Fi, that is in motion. POs have been sent for that. Right now, probably not going to see the equipment for that until early January. That's the last target I was given last week when I was speaking to the vendor. It is what it is. After that, we can start talking about that's when they'll schedule installs and deployments, because obviously they're not going to schedule their labor if we don't know we have equipment here. But with that, I don't see that holding us back on handing out the laptops. Obviously when we talked about this back in June, there was a lot of concerns about having all those other pieces in place, in part because we're talking about making ourselves a large financial debt. Like, we're going to spend this kind of money and impair ourselves financially this bad. We better get something for it. We're in a little different stance now in that we're giving extra relief dollars that we were anticipating having. So when you use the term we're cutting some corners, even though it's not what we're doing, but we're rushing some things and putting some carts in front of some other horses. What we're going to do is, by giving them their laptops at home, we're at least going to fill the need of the technology gap at home, which is our biggest barrier to effective distance learning right now. And so even though we may not have Wi-Fi in school yet, we can at least help the students at home who need it. And so once the Wi-Fi comes into the district later on, they'll already have their laptops, and we can just migrate into also using them on-premise. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The other interesting thing is the vendor came back with more favorable pricing than we were anticipating. And so after some back and forth conversations and some pencil sharpening, we're not going to be doing a retrofit. We're only going to, which was our initial plan, which was replacing some pieces of the wireless infrastructure across the district. We're actually going to replace everything. So that's another kind of nice bonus we're going to get from that too. We'll have current latest generation Wi-Fi across the whole district, very standardized. There won't be older stuff over here and newer stuff over there. So that was kind of a nice added bonus as well. So that's kind of the quick update on that. If you have any questions, I'll certainly try to answer them, but I pretty much shared everything I had right now with you. So it's going really well. I'm excited where we're at. We're much farther ahead than I anticipated, so I'm very happy with where we are right now.
Questions, Brian?
So you said we originally planned a retrofit, and instead we kind of are able to
Do the whole thing.
full upgrade, and that's at a similar cost because of
No, it's more.
It's more.
It is more. But when we were initially back weighing, like, okay, if we were to do the whole thing, it was going to cost X amount of dollars, and all the asset, I don't remember what that number was on the top of my head, compared to what we were anticipating paying, which was kind of in the $150,000 range. That was a retrofit, whereas the full thing was significantly more than that. We kind of said, not even considering. And then once we got to the point where, okay, we're ready to order now, and the numbers came back, they were more favorable than we were initially anticipating. And when Beth Richard and I sat down and kind of looked at some of the numbers, we looked at it and said, this is really close. If the vendor's willing to work with us here, we could do the whole thing. Like, we could make this work within our budget plan that we have for this project. So I went back and I said, we're close, what can you do for me? And they came back with another $12,000 off on top of everything else, which got us in the 30 range, I think. There's still a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But it's less than we were initially projecting, and based on the budget we had laid out, we feel that we can do it without breaking the bank source. So.
And is all this coming from the CARES Act, or is it partially coming from technology dollars, or?
A lot of it's CARES, right? Was it COVID relief funds?
Plus also the county.
Yeah.
The county's getting it.
Yeah, there's multiple revenue streams here, and I can't remember all the acronyms. That's Sierra, FEDC, there's several revenue streams here from the different relief funds, plus some technology dollars that are all revenue funds. So.
But no general funds, or some?
That's more of that question at this point.
Both are leaves of this one.
Okay.
I mean, nothing outside of the normal annual scope of the technology budget. We're not dipping into anything else.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Anything else?
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Is that it, Brian?
Yeah, that's, 7E, mid-year superintendent eval update, so, just I'll be sending out a link for, board members to have an opportunity to do a mid-year eval for the superintendent. I did wanna, I think it was you, Sunny, and Karen, you were down, well, I don't know, this maybe isn't the time, but maybe a work session or something, talks about 2 meetings in November and how that falls, and we only have one, so it doesn't really jive with how it should go, so maybe we can talk about that work session. Otherwise, just look for that update, for that link, Number 8, superintendent report. So up on the screen I have my report for you. Wanted to start off with enrollment. As you can see, month of September 1st, October 1st, enrollment 1st, we're within 4 students of each other, so we've been really stable. We do have a family of 5 that looked at enrollment today, so we're going to be right in there for enrollment from where we started, which is always a good thing. It is still less than what we started with projection, but the fact that we're holding steady is really good. Second part of this is COVID, and again, we've all seen the numbers that are going on in our county, in our state, in our local, and we're watching it very carefully. In the last statement, again, we're making the best decisions we can, and as timely as we possibly can. And we know that at any time we might have to make tough decisions, but right now we have a good plan for November, and we're still on track. Just want to remind people that our focus, again, is for the safety of all. Both in educating our students and having as much person education as possible. And then a reminder that as required, we do have an online option for students to be a ROCORI student. Just a short recap that your decision on October 26th was to keep us in PK-12 and hybrid, allowing our PK-5 students to come to school every day in person because we can meet the 50% capacity. That our 6 through 12 students would continue AV on campus through the second trimester, and that we would do a distance learning day on the 20th to practice just in case. And then again, we are still watching on a daily basis our staff student levels by buildings, by grades, by the district. I just threw this slide in here just to remind people again that the Department of Education and Health have put out what's called the scalpel approach. And so we are watching very carefully what's happening in our region, in our community, but we're also watching very closely what's happening in our school. And that, for example, in Stearns County, you're going to have 12 to 13 different schools, and there might be 12 to 15 different models going on. Because again, we have the scalpel approach, what's working best for your district. And again, that's coming right from MDE and MDH. So this next slide just finishes out the paragraphs on that. Just a reminder what we are considering. Again, the data at the county, state, and buildings, as well as our students. So what was our data last week? Stearns County is at 81.5. Remember, that's cases per 10,000 over a 14-day period, as well as ROCORI's being 135. And I just want to again remind people that the initial numbers where we started with was what we were supposed to do. So we started a hybrid, and we can vary from where we're doing based off what's happening in our home school.
Mr. Kelly, can you
Yes.
back? So just to clarify, when you say ROCORI is at 135, that is the ROCORI, it's not like the ROCORI school district, it's the ROCORI community, so the
It is.
boundaries of that our school district lies in.
It's the boundaries of our school district, but it's not the actual, like, boundaries, they're called census blocks, and so there might be a little bit, but for the most part, the census block is more, according to Sally at Stearns County, is more up to date than what our actual district lines are.
Okay. But it's not those are numbers in the buildings.
No, those are not numbers within the
That
buildings.
is our
Yes,
local.
that's the three communities, Rockville, Richmond, and Colesburg. I do get lots of questions on, like, does St. John's enter into this, or does St. Ben's enter this? The answer to that question is no. St. John's and St. Ben's is actually in St. Cloud's school district. So if St. John's and St. Ben's has an outbreak, that does not affect the Corey's numbers. That affects actually the St. Cloud school district's numbers.
So that would be fair to list that as, school district area. You put reported on there and it's confusing for people where if it says school district area, it is more encompassing. It says our whole area that's in the school district. Because I can see where people would be confused with that just being labeled reported. That's a suggestion only, you can do whatever you want.
I have no problem making it better or less confusing for people. You can see we're not the only county in this situation. Our neighbors to the north, Morrison County is quite a bit higher. Canby-Ojai County is quite a bit higher. And those schools, they're doing their best too. Lund and Spicer next door, right next door to us, they're staying in their current hybrid model. You can see that we keep the dashboard as for history for people to see. No surprise that as the school year started and the spike in cases in our nation has gone up, we're seeing that here. But the really good news is that I want to share with you is that despite that, we're still seeing we saw actually a decrease in our numbers from last week to this week. This slide here shows again where our student numbers come from, and right now we have cases in 2 buildings, our secondary and Cold Spring Elementary. Again, low positivity rates. We also have our quarantine students staff that are out district-wide. And what I want to show you here again is since October 8th, so the whole first week of October, we finished better than we did when we started October. So again, despite what's happening in our region, within our school walls, our numbers have shown a decrease over the last 2 weeks. And again, it speaks to families of our students doing the right thing, making sure that they do a pre-screen before they come to school, making sure they keep their kids home if they're sick. It speaks to our cleaning staffs doing their jobs in the classrooms. It speaks to our teachers helping out wherever they can. I mean, it takes an effort to do this.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
If you go back a slide to the quarantine numbers. Right now, I think we're just talking about like students at CSE or John Clark. I didn't know maybe your perspective or the board's thoughts. Is there an opportunity, or is that being too detailed as far as saying, if it's a 3rd grade class or 1st grade class, is that valuable information? Is that too much information? I just don't know what people's thoughts are on that. Just in the spirit of trying to be transparent, but yet trying to be respectful of privacy. as a parent, I just am wondering,
Yeah, I guess I would ask what would be the value, like what would somebody do with that information? Like what's the actionable thing by understanding what classroom is closed down? Does that really change anything?
I agree.
Can do,
So my thoughts on that are, maybe understanding the process of the contact tracing that happens within our building, maybe that some clarification or even just like a little outline of that process would be helpful for our community, because maybe if they understood the process, it's kind of binary. You're either in close contact or you're not for the CDC recommendations, or you're not. And so those are the students that are getting quarantined. So having more information on if you weren't in close contact, I don't know that it would inform parents or teachers. However, if they understand the process, maybe there'll be a little bit more trust that they're not in quarantine, they haven't been personally notified, they are fine. That's kind of what my thoughts have been. Because I do get concerned about sharing classroom level data. I think it's important that we protect our students and staff from identification.
I just want to make sure that, we are, and I think that is a good point as far as trying to explain the process and how we got to that, so that people just have as much information as we can give them to have some sense of trust or confidence in the process.
And if people understand and we respect their privacy and getting to that much level of detail doesn't really provide any value, I think people will be more willing to abide by the guidelines. And what I mean by that is if they're worried about their information being exposed, if you will, or shared, maybe they won't be as forthcoming with us about who they've been with. And it has kind of an adverse effect where these unintended consequences of being overly transparent actually move those who feel threatened to be less transparent with us, and then we sort of lose control on how we manage through this pandemic together.
Well, and I would say, to the point of where we are, I mean, obviously that we've gone down, that's successful. What we're doing as far as tracing, it seems to be, and we haven't had to have a building shut down.
Yeah.
So,
we want people to feel comfortable and safe and sharing with us, that maybe whatever their situation is, knowing that we're going to keep those things confidential and only share the information that
We absolutely have to.
is meaningful and will actually make a difference.
But I don't think it will hurt for me to say, well, what happens when you are.
Yeah, what's the process?
Okay, so that's our quarantine history. Then we just started last week looking at attendance. And again, I'm happy to share with you that we are monitoring the COVID-related absences. So we're watching for those students who have symptoms and staff that have symptoms. And we're also checking out attendance. So when I talk about the secondary attendance being 90%, those are those kids who are supposed to be there on A day. Those kids are supposed to be on B day, and I average those 2 days. So we're averaging about 90% of the kids who are supposed to be in school on that day are secondary. And then at the elementaries, we're averaging about 88%.
How does that compare with just an everyday normal year?
I knew somebody was going to ask me that, and I'm sorry, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, but
Okay.
I will look into that.
Yeah, I just think it just provides some context around, is that same or similar as we would normally see? Is it potentially better? Is it maybe a little bit worse, which I guess would be sort of understandable, but it's really important for us to know that level of students, we're giving them the opportunity to come to the classroom. 88 to 90% of the days, they're coming to the classroom. They're choosing, we're giving them the choice, and they're making the choice to come to school.
So typically you get flagged on attendance back in the old model, it would be under, I think it was 85%, wasn't it, Sam? For Wilderness workforce? What do we get flagged at for attendance?
The new one that they came out with is students who, of the days that they were enrolled, were there, I think it was 90%, 85 or 90% of the time for the actual days they were enrolled.
Okay. Well, I'll look into that.
It's just a contextual data point, really.
So this slide here is nothing new. It just shows that should we have to make moves, which again, many of the districts in the area have had to make fast moves. We're going to try to do it as scaffolded as possible, trying to keep our youngest learners in for as long as possible. And just that, again, we're in this for November. So we did have a meeting today. Our emergency plan team meeting went today, and we talked about a number of things. Most recently, or most importantly, we had to talk about what's going to happen going forward out of Executive Order 2094 and Executive Order 2095, which, again, the district has done a really good job of meeting 11 of the 12 points, but there's one point that we just weren't ready for, and that is the additional preparation time for teachers that are in distance or hybrid learning. And we do not have a plan for that built in. We talked about a number of plans tonight, and so I can bring those forward to you. Lynn and Sunny, if you want to jump in and write this anything, please do. So the first plan we talked about is the ask of Education Minnesota ROCORI. Do you want this time? So the executive order has given us this time as teachers prepare, and I think the answer to that question is yes, they would like the time. The second.
So you have already asked them and they've already said that they do, or you're going to ask them?
Well, I mean, it was on our agenda today, and I asked them. I didn't hear a no.
They did say they have talked with their...
That's right. They have reached out to their, so I do not have a definite answer.
There was no yes or no.
Yeah.
The comment was that they had reached out to their rep, their union rep, for area rep, or whatever they call that, and haven't heard back yet.
So just the conversation that I've had since that happened with teachers would be that, number one, they haven't been asked that, and I just want to make sure the teachers are asked by their union reps or the leadership so that the teachers as a whole can make a decision on whether or not they want to stay in the system that we're in instead of, making us uphold, or turn everything over to try to figure out how to get this 30 extra minutes. If they feel that they're able to manage, again, I just want to make sure that they're really asked. And again, when they say they're asking somebody at union, it's not even someone that's part of our school, correct? I mean, so then this becomes a union topic instead of our own teachers making a decision on what they think is good for this community. So I just want to make sure, again, that we're super clear with the public that we're trying to let our teachers make a decision on what they want to be able to do if they feel that they're being, if they feel they can handle the situation right now. Versus a union rep just following the line of the union, but how dare you, help in this pandemic and stay in the model that we're in, because all of us are sacrificing all the jobs that we have. And I'm not saying that they don't need 30 minutes. We just know it's going to be very difficult as a school to figure out how we're going to do this, because it could mean 30 less minutes per day for each kid. Simple as that. And I don't think anybody wants it. So I just want to make sure that our teachers get the chance to voice their opinion.
And so let me take a step back. So the word executive order just leads me to this conclusion that we have no options. You have to do this, right? So, but do we have options? And the option would be, can the teachers choose they would rather spend that 30 minutes in the classroom with the students versus prep time?
in the order, it says it's executive council agrees to it, so I'm guessing that means that that's what they're gonna ask their reps for.
But,
It's always guidance.
but to her point, if the teachers say we'd rather spend this time providing instruction to the students, they can waive having the extra prep time. And I think to Shannon's point, one thing that we have to understand is that this extra 30 minutes, however we carve it out, will be 2.5 hours per week of less instruction time per student. Every student is going to lose 2.5 hours of instruction time. And they're already losing a lot of instruction time in the hybrid model that we're in, and for every day that they're at home. And so I think we really need to be making sure that we're asking our teachers, and it needs to go by a majority of the teachers, not the teachers that sit on the EPT team, not the teachers that are the leaders for Education Minnesota. I think it's a question that needs to be asked. And people need to understand that those 30 minutes are taken away from the kids.
Yeah,
The only people that are harmed in this whole executive order are our students. And that's a disgrace.
yeah, and I do have some concern too, in that the loss of instruction time deeply concerns me. I'd like to think our teachers would prefer to spend that time instructing versus prep time. So giving the benefit of the doubt on that. The other thing that kind of concerns me too is parents. I mean, parents' lives have already been upended. What are our options? I know there's been some ideas probably thrown out about like, how would we manage through that? Like, how do we reasonably adjust a schedule to not upend all the parents' lives as well?
And that's what it's talked about, as far as options.
Okay, I have some real concerns about that. I think that parents are, a lot of them, for the sake of their children, are really going above and beyond. Lots more parents transporting their students to school this year, which we deeply appreciate. That comes at some level of a sacrifice. And then to make this scheduling adjustment just a few months into the year, I think parents are really going to be scrambling. And so it's not just, it is about students, don't get me wrong. But there's this trickle effect of all these other people that this is going to disrupt their already chaotic lives. And I'm really sensitive to that. And I think that we should be able to come to some sort of agreement with the teachers that we keep the kids in the classroom receiving instructions, and we try to provide as much stability as we possibly can to our families. So I guess that would be my plea to our teaching group.
Well, I think on the statewide level, the governor is already making comments about that there wasn't enough discussion with the School Board Association or the Superintendent Association, so I think he's been looking at this one. So there may be some changes statewide, but we have to live with it until we hear that too.
Yeah, so I did get a message from our groups that not happy with the decision, that it did not involve boards and superintendents. Whether or not that will be enough to change the executive order, I don't know, but I know this, we can't wait till the last minute to plan, so we need to have something in place should we be required to do this. So that was the discussion, that's the discussion after that.
So Brett, can you explain then for everybody, if the governor didn't make the decision, and the boards and the superintendents didn't make the decision, who made the decision to put it in the next executive order?
Well, the governor did.
Well, it sounds like he's blindsided a little bit. I mean,
It came from MD.
so then, but if the governor's not trying to back it out, why did he allow it to be put in there in the first place? That's what I'm saying. I mean, again, the public needs
Well,
to.
we can't solve for that. I'll
Well,
disagree with you.
but I'm just saying, I would like to believe that we as a school district would have that information. Who made the decision then?
Ultimately, it was the governor's decision.
Okay, so the governor made the decision to take away 30 minutes per day without talking to schools or school boards. Period. That's what people need to know.
Okay, and then, so if we were to take a poll,
operationally, how would this work in practice? So if we were to ask the teachers to vote, are we aware of what the vote was, this many against this many, and do we know who the people are that voted on this side versus this side? Similar to like when we vote, we have to be held accountable to if we say yes or no to something? How does that work?
I don't, stop number 2. I don't know if we can actually ask them for the vote, but I will.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
They have to take a vote. I mean, I would love to see it,
But
but I want to trust that they're actually going to take a vote.
Why can't we as a district ask them that question? Why do we have to wait for the union to ask them that question? We are asking our teachers what they feel is best. Do they absolutely need the 30 minutes every day for prep time, or would they rather keep those 30 minutes in the classroom? Why can't we ask that?
It's a great question. And I guess my second question to you, Pat, did they ever come to you, Brad, and ask you for 30 minutes? I mean, where did this come, I don't know that I've ever heard that as an issue that our teachers had. Maybe other districts have that issue going on for whatever reason, but if it wasn't a concern, then why, I think I would like to believe to Jennifer's comment that more of them would say, I'm willing to help keep this thing the way it is.
That's the hope that I have, and the belief I have in our
Because-
teachers and their commitment to our district and to our students.
Because it doesn't sound like we asked, right? I mean, superintendents weren't asking for this.
I did not, when I saw it on Thursday, I was surprised.
So where did it come from?
The teachers union.
Right, but I mean, again, to the point, the teachers union that doesn't represent the teachers that are actually in the schools. Because I don't know that our general population of teachers were asking for this. So, again, I would like to believe, and that's where I think, as everybody said here, we have to build trust that our union reps are going to actually allow our teachers to voice their opinion. Because I think we'll be surprised with the overwhelming amount of teachers that would say, you know what, I'm willing to fight for that 30 minutes to keep the life the same.
I'll set a meeting with the
Yeah,
and the negotiators.
But if we do have to follow the executive order, it remains unchanged, November 30th is the date. And so we would have to have a board meeting to vote on any schedule change or calendar change.
Over a calendar change would be something the board would want to be involved in.
So do you want us to just, you might need to just plan for the 30th or something, because let's wait for the last.
Well, the last Monday, or the last day before the 30th would be Thanksgiving's Thursday, the 26th. Friday the 27th.
We'd have to give parents more notification than that. If we have to abide by the executive order.
Yeah, I'd be willing to, having just found out about this, we have a board meeting today, I'd be willing to give some time to let the teachers work out how they want to move forward, and then we make a plan based on what they decide, versus pontificating today all these different ideas and all these different things we could do, when maybe none of it is necessary because they say they want to forego the 30 minutes so we can stay in the classroom and not disrupt people's lives.
Agree 100%. You can set the
So
dates.
I'm willing to schedule another board meeting,
It might make sense to cover that into a subcommittee, it's a little more nimble and
Maybe.
maybe more focus group. I would say this would probably deal with negotiations.
I do want to just let people know that in the EPT meeting today, basically after we talked about all of the potential options, the only one that the administrators in that group, and I had to leave early, so maybe this changed at some point, but while I was on the call, the only option that the administrators felt they could actually do would be to have an early out, like a 2.5-hour early out once a week.
That's almost more challenging than getting out a little bit early every day, because that's just disrupts a whole other day. I mean, why? I guess I agree with Jennifer. We don't need to get in the weeds on it, because, I thank you, Sonny, for, sharing that, but let's hope that the teachers kind of maybe go away. I mean, we
I
can
just-
sit here and,
I just wanted to put it out there because we've been talking about the idea of 30 minutes a day, but that isn't actually what this group felt would be feasible. The way I took it is that 30 minutes, ending 30 minutes early or starting 30 minutes late each day would not be feasible due to the staffing of specialists and making sure that they're able to do all of their contract work. And so the only option that seemed feasible would be the once a week, 2.5 hour early out or late start.
And we talked about the early out made more sense because then we feed the kids breakfast and lunch, which is very important for a lot of families.
And the first date this would affect us would be December 11th.
December
11th. It's December 4th, we already have a workshop date in place, and we would just forego the PD on that day. We would have prep time and then there, yeah, we would just, so the first day this would affect us would be December 11th.
Okay, so we have time.
A little bit of time.
Yeah, I think this should go to subcommittee.
Yep, I think so too.
And there's the ultimate hope that the governor's getting pressure from superintendents and school boards, just like us, saying,
Yeah.
oh, you didn't, I mean, really? You just threw this at us without really, on a call on Thursday without any notice at all, correct, is what I'm hearing?
I was very surprised by it.
So hopefully they realize the magnitude of maybe the mistake, because it's gonna be super challenging for all schools. So hopefully it goes away.
So the subcommittee will be the negotiation committee, so
That's what I heard. Does anybody want to disagree with that?
Makes sense.
And then potentially another meeting on the 23rd then, November 23rd. Full meeting?
I would say, depending on what the subcommittee finds.
Yep, depending on the outcome of all this.
So if
Shakes
you
out.
need to call a special meeting, then you can. Otherwise, I would say there's too much.
And then, of course, every slide show just a plea again. Be safe. And hear those pleas. So that covers. Matthew.
Can you just speak to, I know we are keeping students in district for the hybrid model, and then our numbers have been staying up, and the attendance has been good, but there is opportunity for families or parents who want to maybe do distance learning because of the numbers changing. Can you speak to that just for?
Yeah, again, so as stated in one of my first slides here, if you just don't feel safe, but you still want to be a ROCORI student, you have an opportunity with Edgenuity. And you have a licensed ROCORI teacher who oversees you do that, as well as the Edgenuity itself. If that doesn't interest you, we don't want to lose you as a student, but there are other online opportunities, there's some connections, those types of places where you can also enroll. We want to keep you as a ROCORI student, and we have an online option for you too. Thanks.
And clarify, teachers also have that same option? If teachers have concerns with their own health and feel like, they need to be in a distance learning, we have tried to work with them to find other duties.
That is correct. We have done our best to work with every person who is in either, whether they're in a quarantine situation or whether they're in a medical situation. We have worked with all staff to try to give them opportunities.
But we haven't turned anybody, that said, I just can't do this because I'm too anxious, but we have not turned anybody away from that.
Although right now we are full of engineering, we do not need another staff.
Correct, I'm not advocating that they do it, but I want to make sure again that the public knows that we've given all those teachers that opportunity of not have turned anybody away that did not feel safe coming to school because of their own personal issues.
Correct, to start the year. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
Is that it then, on your superintendent?
Yeah.
Okay. Budget comparison report.
You saw Beth's report there. You saw the notes on where our expenditures and revenues have varied because of COVID. Her report is there. I don't have anything else to add, sorry, Jason.
Any questions for Brad about that?
If there are, I'll certainly get back to you.
Okay, and then upcoming events and activities. So they had the EPT meeting today, our board meeting, there's C membership meeting, and then we're having a canvassing meeting, which is not included in there, but that's 7:30 here on Friday morning. Canvass the reflection results. That Stearns has a meeting on the 18th. We've got a virtual banquet going up on the 18th, also educational support staff banquet. And then another EPT meeting on the 23rd. So, and it sounds like the negotiation committee will be having to set up a time or two before that 23rd meeting. So, anything else meetings that people have? Yeah, okay, so meeting adjourned then. We need to take a break.
Breathe.